If you're reading this, I want you to imagine a woman sitting at her kitchen table at 2:17 a.m., coffee gone cold, hands trembling not from age but from memories she's tried to bury for far too long. That woman is me, and my name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm 72 years old. Nice to meet you, I guess. Let me start with a quick confession, something that should hook you right by the collar. The day my family told me to stay quiet because it was adult conversation, I decided I would never play the quiet, polite old woman again, and trust me, they regretted underestimating me that I hadn't planned on starting a war that evening. I just wanted a peaceful Sunday dinner. The kind I used to make decades ago when my husband was still alive, and my kids still believed the moon hung on a string I held in my hand. But things change, people grow up. People grow cold. My daughter, Melissa, had invited me to her home for a family discussion. That should have been my first clue. My family doesn't discuss things unless someone wants money, forgiveness, or both. That I arrived 15 minutes early, because women of my generation were trained to think punctuality was a moral virtue. When I stepped inside, the house smelled like the lavender candles I'd given her last Christmas, the ones she'd claimed she didn't like because they triggered her migraines. Funny how they didn't seem to bother her now. They were all there, Melissa stiff as a fence post, her husband Mark pretending he liked me, their two grown sons in the living room pretending they didn't see me. That I could tell immediately something was off, the way they stood too straight, the tight pull at the corners of their mouths, the fast eye contact they exchanged like they were confirming a secret script. Mom, we'll start in a minute, Melissa said. That I nodded, placed my purse on the chair, and tried to ignore the uneasy knot forming in my stomach. I'd learned long ago not to react too quickly. People mistake elderly silence for weakness. I prefer it that way. Silence makes them comfortable, comfort makes them careless. When we finally sat down at the dining table, Melissa cleared her throat and folded her hands like she was auditioning to be the family CEO. Before we begin, she said, Mom, we need you to just listen, okay? This is adult conversation. Adult conversation. Yes, if 72 years on this earth, raising her through broken bones, heartbreaks, bad grades, wild phases, and a catastrophic marriage hadn't earned me a seat at the table. That I felt my face warm, felt my jaw tighten, but I said nothing. Not yet. Melissa began explaining that they were concerned about my well-being, which was code for, you're becoming inconvenient. That's when she actually told me what they had decided. They wanted me to move out of my own home, the house I bought, the house I maintained, the house where her father and I spent 47 years together. It's too big for you, she said. Too many risks. The stairs, the yard work, it's all too much. What risks? I asked quietly. Moments passed. Melissa wouldn't look at me. Then Mark, always the brave one when he's hiding behind his wife, leaned back and said, Well, you fell last winter. I slipped on ice, I replied. People slip. And the neighbor said you forgot the trash pickup day 3 times, he added, as if he had been holding on to that like a trump card. So? I said. He shrugged. You're getting older, Evelyn. It happens. We just think it's time you transition. Transition. I swear I felt my heart stutter. To what, exactly? I asked. Melissa smiled, that tight, rehearsed smile. We found a place for you. A facility. A great one. Really. It will take care of everything. No, I said. She blinked. Mom, we're trying to help. No, I repeated, my voice stronger this time. You're trying to get rid of me. Mark exhaled loudly and exchanged a look with her sons, one that said, she's being difficult again, and then, oh, you'll love this. He leaned forward and wagged a finger in my direction like I was a toddler about to spill juice. Evelyn, please. Stay quiet. We're not done discussing this. Stay quiet. I felt heat rising behind my eyes, but not from tears, from a kind of anger I hadn't felt since my husband died. I pressed my palms against my knees, grounding myself. Calm, breathe. Because what they didn't know was that I had my own plans and my own cards to play. Let me tell you something, I finally said, my voice soft, steady. I built that house. I paid for it. I kept it running. And if you think you can make decisions about my life without me, Mom, Melissa interrupted sharply, we already signed the preliminary paperwork. They're holding the room until I stood up. The chair screeched backward on the hardwood floor, slicing the room open with a sound sharp as truth. Her sons flinched. Mark went pale. Melissa stared at me like I had broken character in a play she wrote. I didn't shout, I didn't shake. I simply reached into my purse and pulled out a folded document, the exact one I'd had notarized the week before. Before you go any further, I said, you should know that I updated my will. You could have heard a spider sneeze, all eyes locked on me. And Melissa, I continued, since you and your family are so concerned about my well-being, I decided to make things easier. I unfolded the paper slowly, deliberately, and laid it flat on the table. I removed all of you. Melissa's mouth dropped, the boys stiffened. Mark muttered something under his breath. I leaned in, letting them see the certainty in my eyes. My house goes to the women's shelter I volunteer at. My savings go to scholarships for single mothers. My remaining assets go to charity. Pause and you get nothing. Melissa shot up from her chair. Mom, you're being emotional. Damn right I am, I said. I am emotional. I am human. Something you seem to have forgotten. She looked at her husband, then back at me, panic rising in her throat. You did this because of tonight? No, I said gently. I did this because of every night. Every ignored call. Every visit you cancelled. Every holiday you gave me 2 hours of your time before running off somewhere more important. I did this because you only remember me when you need something. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I grabbed my coat. I may be old, I said, but I am not disposable. And then I walked out, slow, dignified, not looking back. My heart was pounding, but my spine was straight, because the truth is, there are moments in life when a person realizes they've been holding their breath for years, and suddenly they remember how to exhale. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. I thought about my life, my choices, my regrets. I wondered what my husband would have said, probably something like, "About damn time, Evie." And for the first time in years, I smiled because I wasn't done. No, my revenge was only beginning. After I left Melissa's house that night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was upset, oh, I'd passed upset long ago, but because I was planning. I've learned something at 72. When people push you into a corner, they never expect you to push back. And when you finally do, it scares them more than anything. I sat at my dining table with a cup of tea, though I barely tasted it. My hands rested around the ceramic mug, the warmth comforting, grounding. The house creaked the way old houses do, like it sighs along with you. My husband used to say the house spoke to him. I used to laugh. But that night, I swear it whispered, "Don't let them take me." I ran my fingertips along the wood grain of the table. 40 years of meals, fights, birthdays, apologies, laughter, and long silences lived in that wood. People forget homes have memories too. By morning, I had made my decision. If my daughter thought she could bulldoze me into some facility, she was about to learn exactly what her mother was made of. When the sun finally rose, staining the kitchen in soft gold, I packed a small tote bag. Nothing dramatic, just documents, a notebook, my reading glasses, and a blue pen I had used for 30 years. I drove myself to see my attorney, a calm, grey-haired man named Benjamin Price, who had handled my will update the week before. He smiled when he saw me walking through the door. "Back so soon, Evelyn? I'm afraid things have escalated," I said as I sat down. And not in the direction I'd hoped. I explained what happened, how Melissa had spoken to me, the way they tried to ambush me with their decision. He listened silently, folding his hands over his stomach like he was sizing up a chessboard. "So," he said eventually, "you want protection." "I want control," I corrected. "Of my life, my house, my future, all of it." He nodded, then reached for a file. "Well," he said, "then it's good you came." He explained something I hadn't realized before. My daughter had no legal right to force me out unless I was declared mentally incompetent, which, thank you very much, I wasn't. And they would have a hell of a time proving otherwise. He slid some papers toward me. "If you want," he said, "we can put formal measures in place so no one can make decisions behind your back, not medical, not financial, nothing." I looked down at the forms. Each line felt like a step toward reclaiming myself, one signature at a time. While I signed, I could almost hear Melissa's voice echoing in my memory. "Stay quiet, Mom. This is adult conversation." My pen didn't waver, not once. When I came home that afternoon, I found my neighbor, Rose, watering her garden. She's 68, divorced twice, loud as a marching band, and more loyal than any family member I currently had. She waved the moment she saw me. "You okay? You look like a woman with a secret." I laughed, probably the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. "You have no idea," I said. "Want coffee?" Rose never said no to coffee. Or gossip. Or drama. We sat at my kitchen table, and I told her everything. Her eyes widened at each detail, her mouth tightening the moment I described the phrase adult conversation. "Oh, honey," she said, shaking her head, her earrings jingling. That's not just disrespect. That's strategy. They want you out of here. I know. And they're stupid if they think you'll go quietly. I smiled. That's the part they always forget. She leaned forward, lowering her voice the way people do when they're about to suggest something mischievous. You want help? She asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. For a long moment, I just stared at her, this woman who wasn't blood, who had no obligation to me, who simply cared because that's who she was. I said, I think I do. Rose became my unofficial partner in crime within a week. She helped me heavy checkmark strengthen all my home security systems, heavy checkmark set up a camera above the front porch, heavy checkmark install a motion sensor near the back door. Heavy checkmark organize my important documents in a fireproof safe, heavy checkmark create a password system for all accounts so my family couldn't snoop. Heavy checkmark transfer a portion of my savings to an account only I had access to. Each step felt like putting bricks back into the wall they thought they'd toppled. But the best part, the part that made Rose cackle loud enough to scare the birds, I decided to rent the spare room in my home not to a stranger, but to a graduate student named Elena, majoring in nursing, responsible, sweet, quiet, independent, and most importantly, someone who respected me. She moved in 2 weeks later with her suitcases, her thick textbooks, and her wide-eyed gratitude. Thank you so much, she said while settling in. The dorms were chaos. This means everything. Well, I told her, I like having company. And it was true. The house, once too quiet, felt alive again, laughter in the hallway, footsteps on the stairs, another mug in the dish rack. If my daughter thought I was unsafe living alone, she was about to have that argument ripped right out of her hands. Melissa didn't find out immediately, but when she did, oh God, she showed up at my house with the kind of forced calm you only see in people who are about to explode. I opened the door and she stood on the porch, her arms crossed so tight I thought her bones might snap. Mom, she said, we need to talk. That's funny, I replied. Last time, you told me I wasn't allowed to talk. She clenched her jaw. Can I come in? I stepped aside, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted an audience for what was about to happen. Elena was studying at the kitchen table, laptop open, hair tied up in a bun. She looked up politely. Hi, she said. Melissa stared at her like she'd found a raccoon drinking out of the cereal bowl. Who is that? That, I said, is my tenant. Melissa blinked so slowly I thought she might faint. Tenant, she repeated. Yes. She rents the spare room. You rented out a room, without telling us? It's my house, I said. Why would I tell you? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the storm gathering behind her eyes, all her certainty, all her plans, dissolving. Mom, she said softly, we just want what's best for you. That would require knowing me, I said. And you stopped trying years ago. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then I saw it, the truth settling into her posture, her shoulders slumping, her face falling in a way that almost made her look like the girl I raised. The girl who used to come to my bed when she had nightmares. The girl who used to believe I could fix anything, but she wasn't that girl anymore. She whispered, you don't trust me. I looked at her for a long moment. You told me to stay quiet, I said. You tried to take my home. Trust has to be earned, Melissa. And you haven't tried. Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them quickly. This isn't over, she said. I know, I replied. But neither am I. She left without another word. The door closed. Elena, who had pretended to study the entire time, finally exhaled. Well, she said, that was intense. I chuckled. Oh, sweetheart, I told her, you have no idea. My daughter has always mistaken quiet for weakness. I looked out the window, watching Melissa's car disappear down the street. But she's about to learn the truth, I whispered, because this wasn't just conflict anymore, this was war. For a few weeks after Melissa's dramatic visit, there was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, the kind that stalks. A quiet that makes you glance at your phone every hour even though you know no one's going to call. A quiet that feels like someone holding their breath right behind you. I knew Melissa. She wasn't done, she just retreated far enough to plot. And people who plot in silence are the most dangerous. During this time, Elena settled into the house beautifully. She always kept the kitchen clean, left little thank you notes on the counter, and even helped me fix the squeaky back door one Saturday. She treated me like a human being, not a fragile heirloom waiting to crack. Rose visited often too. We talked, laughed, exchanged recipes, and complained about our bad knees, everything women like us were expected to do. But underneath the surface, we strategized. The house felt like a fortress. Not impenetrable, but stronger than before, layered with new locks, updated passwords, and emotional reinforcements. For the first time in a long while, I felt stable. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Then one Wednesday morning, cold, windy, with the kind of air that stings your cheeks, the peace shattered. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard the noise. A car door, then another. Then footsteps, the hurried, heavy kind that hit the pavement with purpose. I peeked through the window. Melissa, Mark, and their oldest son, Jason, all walking toward my house like an army. On a mission. Oh Lord, I muttered. Elena emerged from her room, bleary-eyed, her hair sticking up in every direction. Is there a fire? She asked. Worse, I said. Family. When the doorbell rang, I felt the familiar heaviness settle into my bones, disappointment, dread, anger all swirling together. But I'd learned something in my 72 years. You can't outrun problems that know you're addressed. I opened the door. Melissa's eyes were red, not from crying, but from fury. Mom, she said, we need to talk. There it was again, those words, like a script she couldn't stop quoting. Come in, I said reluctantly. But keep your shoes on. This isn't a long visit. She brushed past me, Mark following behind like her shadow, and Jason trailing with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He nodded at me once, a small, awkward acknowledgement, and I nodded back. Elena stayed in the hallway, pretending to text but obviously listening. Smart girl. They sat at the dining table. I remained standing. Let's make this quick, I said. Melissa inhaled deeply, her chest rising like she was about to give a speech. Mom, you're being manipulated. I blinked. By who? She gestured toward the hallway. Your roommate. Elena. I said flatly. Yes, Melissa snapped. Mom, you let a stranger move in. You don't know her intentions. What if she's taking advantage of you? What if she's after your money? I laughed, actually laughed. Sweetheart, if Elena wanted to rob me, she'd be severely disappointed when she opened my bank account. Melissa shot me a glare. This isn't funny. We're serious. You have a young woman living here. She could convince you to sign something. She could isolate you from us. Oh, Melissa, I said slowly. I don't need help being isolated from you. You managed that all on your own. She flinched. Mark ran a hand through his hair, sighed, and finally spoke. We just don't want you making decisions you'll regret. I've made plenty of regrettable decisions, I replied. One of them was letting you talk to me the way you did at your house. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I could tell he didn't want to be there, but he also wasn't about to challenge his mother. Melissa leaned forward, elbows on the table. Mom, we found another place. A different facility. Better than the first. They have full-time staff, medical support, activities. I am not moving, I said firmly. She exhaled sharply, her lips tightening. You're being childish. Oh, that did it. Something hot and electric surged through me, not anger, but clarity. A sharp, slicing realization that cut clean through the noise. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't about concern. This was about control. Control they used to have, control they didn't have anymore. Control they were desperate to reclaim. I walked to the table, placed both hands on the polished surface, and leaned in until I was inches from my daughter's face. Do you want to know what childish is? I asked quietly. Her eyes widened. Childish is telling your 72-year-old mother to stay quiet like she's a toddler. Childish is making decisions about someone else's life without asking. Childish is assuming you know what's best for me when you've barely been around. Melissa's breath hitched. And do you want to know what adult conversation really is? She swallowed, unable to look away. It's listening. It's respecting boundaries. And it's realizing that growing older does not make me your property. Jason looked down at his shoes. Mark shifted in his chair. But Melissa, her chin trembled, not from sadness, but from being challenged. After a long silence, she gathered her purse and stood. We're not giving up, she said. I know, I replied. But neither am I. They walked to the door, but right before Melissa stepped outside, she turned and said something that chilled me all the way to my fingertips. If you won't protect yourself, Mom, then we'll have to take other steps. Other steps. I stood frozen even after the door closed. Elena walked into the room. She said softly, what does that mean? I stared at the door, my pulse thudding in my ears. It means, I said, this isn't about my safety anymore. I looked toward the window, watching their car pull away. It's about getting me out of the way. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a minute. I sat in the living room with a blanket wrapped around my legs, listening to the ticking clock, waiting for dawn. The house felt tense, like it sensed danger creeping closer. And deep down, I knew something was coming, something I couldn't ignore. Because if Melissa truly believed I was unsafe, she had legal options, scary ones, and now that she'd run out of gentle tactics, she might try the nuclear ones. I closed my eyes, whispering into the darkness, if they try to take everything from me, I will make sure they lose more. Revenge didn't feel petty anymore. It felt necessary. This time, I wasn't just defending my independence. I was defending my life. If the third chapter of this story felt like the pressure before a storm, the final part is the moment the sky finally tears open. Because Melissa didn't just threaten other steps. She took them. It started innocently, the kind of innocent that fools people who aren't paying attention. A phone call from a number I didn't recognize. A polite woman introducing herself as a wellness advocate. A handful of oddly timed visits from routine check-in services I never requested. Small things. Individually harmless, together, a net .1 stretched quietly around me. I wasn't surprised, just disappointed that I had raised my daughter better than this. But children don't stay children, and adults don't always stay decent. Still, I didn't panic. I observed. I documented, and I prepared because every move Melissa made told me the same thing. She had started the process to declare me unfit. And once that process begins, even the strongest people can find themselves drowning. One wrong word, one misunderstood moment, one biased assessment, and you lose everything. Your house, your accounts, your life. So I fought, not with loudness or anger, but with precision. The final blow landed one Thursday morning, humid, thick air, sunlight already hot even at 9 a.m. A knock on my door. Not Melissa, not Mark, not Jason. Two strangers, one woman with a clipboard, one man with a badge clipped to his belt. A social worker and a sheriff's deputy. My stomach dropped, not with fear, but with recognition. Melissa had gone nuclear. Good morning, the woman said with a practiced smile. We're here to conduct a wellness check. I didn't request one, I said. Your family did. Of course they did. She stepped forward, but I kept my hand on the doorframe. Before you come in, I said, I need you to know something. I reached to the side table and lifted a folder Rose had helped me prepare it days earlier, labeled, color-coded, neatly tabbed. Inside this, I said, is documentation of the last 3 weeks. All calls, visits, and incidents I did not authorize. There are also statements from neighbors and my tenant, as well as signed letters from my attorney. The social worker's smile faltered and, I added, taking a deep breath, there's a medical assessment from my doctor confirming that I am mentally competent and living independently. The deputy glanced at the woman. She shifted her weight. May we come inside? She asked again, but her tone was different now, cautious. Yes, I said, stepping back. You may. Elena stood in the hallway, arms folded, watching everything with wide but steady eyes. Rose arrived halfway through, barging through the door like a one-woman cavalry, carrying her own folder full of copies. God bless that woman. For an hour, I answered questions slowly, clearly, confidently. I showed them my accounts, my prescriptions, my routines, my safety measures. I let them speak to Elena, who told them in her gentle, earnest way that living with me was like living with the most organized grandma in the world. The deputy cracked a smile at that. The social worker's expression softened as we talked. At one point, she even sighed. Mrs. Grant, she said, I'm going to be honest with you. Your daughter reported that you were forgetting things, unsafe alone, and being influenced by someone living with you. I see, I replied. And what do you think? She closed her binder. I think you're very capable. And I think, this might be a family conflict, not a safety issue. The deputy nodded. If anything, he added, you seem more prepared than most people we check on. I smiled. Not because I needed approval, but because the truth finally had a witness. Before they left, the social worker asked one last question. Would you like us to follow up with your daughter about misinformation in her report? I tilted my head, pretending to think. Then I answered, with the calm sweetness only a 72-year-old woman can weaponize, yes, please do. I expected Melissa to show up the next day. Instead, it took 2. She arrived alone this time. No Mark, no Jason, no army, just a wounded commander. Her face looked different, not angry, but tired, fragile around the edges. She stood on my porch like she wasn't sure she had the right to knock. When I opened the door, she swallowed hard. Mom, she whispered, we need to talk. Funny, after everything, she finally said it like a request, not an order. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the house like she expected to see chaos, mess, confusion. Instead, She saw a tidy living room. A cup of tea on the table. A crocheted blanket folded on the couch. Elena's shoes neatly by the door. Normalcy. I didn't know they'd send an officer, Melissa said quietly. I didn't know it would go that far. I lifted an eyebrow. Oh? You thought you could tear apart my life without consequences. She flinched. I was scared, she whispered. Of what? She opened her mouth, then closed it, and that silence, that hesitation, told me everything. She wasn't afraid for me. She was afraid of losing control, losing convenience, losing the narrative she built about being the responsible daughter with the fragile mother. I sat down, my knees popping as they always did. Melissa, I said gently, I need you to tell me the truth. She stared at the floor. I thought, if you moved into a facility, things would be easier. For everyone. For me. For Mark. For the kids. I waited and I thought, if anything happened to you, I'd be the one who had to handle it all. I'm not ready, Mom. There it was, not love, not fear, not concern, burdened. I felt something inside me shift, not break, not shatter, just realign, like furniture finally scraped into the right place. I see, I said softly. She looked up, eyes full of tears. But I didn't want to hurt you. Yet you did. She nodded, wiping her cheek. I did. And you didn't trust me. Her voice cracked. I didn't. And you tried to take my home. She covered her face with both hands. I'm sorry. I let her sit in that moment, in her guilt, her fear, her realization. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. I'm not angry at you. Her head snapped up. You're not? No, I said. But I am done letting you make decisions for me. I reached for the folder, pulled out one page, handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Boundaries, I said. And consequences. Inside was a written statement from my attorney, a formal declaration that I was mentally competent, a legal notice preventing anyone from making decisions on my behalf without consent, a clause outlining legal action if false reports continued. Melissa's hands shook. You did all this? Yes. And I'm telling you this with love, Melissa. If you ever try to take my life away from me again, I will protect myself. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You almost did. She crumpled into a chair, sobbing quietly. Not the manipulative crying, the real kind. The kind that hurts the lungs and makes the shoulders shake. I placed a hand on her back, gently at first, then firmer when she leaned into it. Melissa, I said softly, I am still your mother. I'm just not your responsibility. She whispered, I'm sorry, Mom, over and over like a prayer. And maybe it was. We talked for 2 hours about fear, aging, disappointment, miscommunication, resentment. For once, it wasn't a battle. It was an unraveling. By the time she left, her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse, but her steps lighter, and mine, steady, stronger than before. That night, as I sat on the porch with Rose and Elena, watching the evening sky turn soft blue to deep purple, I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare started. Peace, not because everything was fixed, not because Melissa and I suddenly understood each other, but because I had spoken, finally, loudly, in a voice that belonged entirely to me. They had told me to stay quiet, but in the end, I told them everything, and they listened. Maybe for the first time in their lives.